What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time since I made a video. I've been really busy in life ever since basically the new year. I just had too much stuff going on and wasn't able to make videos. So I'm finally back to it. Part of the things that happened that got me so busy is got married. That happened just last week. Probably by the time that I make this video, it's going to be a couple of weeks. But regardless, basically, the beginning of the year was consumed with wedding projects, which I couldn't film and make videos about that stuff just because it's more of a private thing and I didn't find much of it to be exciting to put on YouTube. So regardless, we're finally back to making videos. Some things that have happened in addition to getting married is bought a new car. I'm also going to be selling one of my cars, which I've never sold any of my cars before, actually, now that I think about it. But that's a conversation for another day. For today's video, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be building this Swag Offroad finger brake kit. So this is their 20-ton heavy-duty finger brake. And first things first, we're going to take these instructions and just throw them out the window. Because we don't need those. You know, it's what you're supposed to do. Take the instructions, don't read them, get rid of them, and we're going to build this. Unfortunately, though, as much as I would love to be able to do this in my own garage, the problem is I don't have a MIG welder. So we are going to collect all my tools together that I need to do this, and we are going to take a trip to the shop, and we are going to get this done tonight. So let's get all my stuff together and get in the car and be on the road to getting this completed. So this is everything that's included in the kit. So we got these two little tabs that are meant to keep this centered in your press brake. These two pieces are part of the backstop assembly so you can set depths. Guide tubes and return springs. This is the clamp that actually holds the top of it to your press brake, or not press brake, shop press. This is this piece and this piece are the clamps to hold the fingers in. These are also guideposts, and this is the base, and this is the V that actually sets your bend angle and bend radius. So I know I said that we were going to throw away those instructions, but I was not being serious. I actually did read through them. So the first step that we have to complete is we need to press these two rods into the holes at each end of this piece. So we are going to go do that, and then we are going to plug weld the bottom of those with the MIG welder, and then we can move on to the next steps there. The instructions state that these pins could be hammered in or pressed in with an arbor press. I initially tried the hammer method, but they kept wanting to go in crooked, so I resorted to going to the arbor press to get these in the base properly. On first attempt, the pins didn't want to seat deep enough to what the instructions specify, so I took them back out and then took them over to the belt sander and chamfered the bottom edge of the pin in order to allow it to slide in to the base easier. After I did this, these pins were much easier to press in to the proper depth. So we got the post pressed in. Wasn't the easiest thing in the world. You know, it's a press fit, so should be tight. I get it, but still not fun. Don't know if you'll be able to see this, but the instructions call out for you to be 3/16 to an 1/8 inch from the edge on the bottom. So that is now what we're going to plug weld. So I'm going to flip this over, tack it, check that everything that's supposed to be square is still square, and then go back and we will fully weld the perimeter of that circle. And for reference, those are the weld settings that I'm at least starting with. Again, that came out of the Miller weld app. We'll see how they work. If I have to change them, I have to change them. But let's get to welding. I tacked the pins in two places to make sure that they were decently secure before flipping it back over to check that the pins hadn't shifted from the heat of welding. I'm using a digital angle finder to check these and zeroing it off of the base plate. The instructions just say to use a square, so this is a little bit more overkill than what's probably needed, but I like to overdo things when I have the chance to do that. The posts all measured within 1/2 degree of 90, and that's good enough for me, so we can move on to fully welding the circumference of these pins. So we got those two rods fixed in place. Now the next step is to move on to putting the tubes to where the actual fingers go of the finger brake. So this portion is probably what has me the most nervous about this being correct, because I really don't want to cut these off and I really don't want to weld these to the wrong thing. So really they just tell you to visually align that to be centered, which honestly I hate, just because I'd rather it be fixed in place somehow and then you just weld it. But my eyeball alignment is good enough, I guess. We're gonna find out. So I'm gonna tack this side on, set the next side up, tack it on, and then we're gonna test fit it and see if it slides nicely. If it does, then we'll fully weld it. If it doesn't, then we'll cut them off and try again. So let's see how this goes. So as you can tell, that didn't fit. And I measured everything and it was all square. I took my digital angle finder, checked it all. Everything was within 1/2 degree of each other. So everything was basically 90. And for the record, like, the instructions do not tell you to use a digital angle finder. They just say use a square. So in my mind, 1/2 degree is nothing if you're using a square. You're not gonna notice that. So it should have fit. That was my thought, at least. So then what I did is I cut the tacks off and I test fitted it just like this, just sitting there. And what I found was that you couldn't even put this in between both of those posts. So either something was cut at the top of the tolerances or something needed to be shaved or whatever. I just wish I would have thought to check it ahead of time before just tacking it. But as you can see now, this moves freely in and out. So it should fit. Now I got to do the same setup over again. All I did is I took the ends of these to the belt sander and shaved a bit off. And then both of these, I gave myself a flat spot in there, so it's not, you know, a perfectly round tube anymore. And that should all fit now. So let's do it all over again, and hopefully after it's tacked, this fits together. Fingers crossed. I skipped over tacking these back together. You guys saw it the first time, and no reason to repeat it. So with the tack together, it fit over the guide tubes. Now, I made a critical mistake here. The instructions do not say whether you should or shouldn't test fit the finger clamp portion with the return springs on the pins. If you're watching this now before you build your own, don't put those springs on, and make sure that the tubes slide all the way down the length of the pins freely. I should have realized this at the time, but I'm going to blame it on me being tired and also being in a rush. But that's a little hint for what's going to go wrong later. After the lackluster test fit that I thought was good, it's time to move on and fully weld these tubes. I think I actually did a decent job of welding these tubes in because I didn't have a bunch of slag on the machine surfaces. And now that it's fully burned in, it's time for, you guessed it, another test fit. And this is where I realized that having those springs on was a dumb decision, and also learned that this binds up.
So this is all done now. Now we're just gonna let it sit here and cool down and hope that it fits after it's cooled off. But we are going to move on to what I think is the last step of this. So this is just a chunk of angle iron, basically, that's supplied with the kit. The only thing that this specifies is that the bottom of the V basically can't be holding up the side. So like, you can't have any rock, which you can hear it a little bit. So I'm going to take this out, take a quick skim on the bottom edge of it with the angle grinder with the flap disc on it. And then the only thing you have to do before you weld this in, you need to weld the bolts here because you lose access to them. So we gotta weld the heads of those down, which should be fairly easy. Take a quick skim off of this, and then we're ready to weld. And then we're practically done. The only part left after this, I think, is the little, basically the attachment to the top of your shop press. So we're almost there.
This is by far the biggest amount of welding needed on this entire project. Thankfully, it's not hard to do by any stretch, and it's not super critical like the welding on the last step. All that I need to pay attention to while doing this is to keep rotating around this piece and try to distribute the heat as evenly as possible. I wish I would have paid more attention to what direction I was welding each side, because I ended up welding each half of each side in the opposite direction of each other. So the center of the weld looks a little funny, but really that's just appearances and doesn't offer any structural drawbacks in this case. And after finishing up all 39 inches of the weld, we are ready to move on.
So we got our all welded up tonight. We're gonna let it cool overnight, and then we'll play around with it a little bit tomorrow. Hopefully, that's the goal at least. But looks pretty good. I've slid it together and it doesn't slide 100% great, which kind of makes me a little bit nervous, but we'll try it out tomorrow and see what happens. So all of this welded up nicely. This was fun to weld as well. There's a whole lot of welding to do. I think total this is like 38 inches wide, or sorry, 19 inches wide, which 38 when you do both sides. So made for a long time switching back and forth, but some sections are better than others. You can see, like, that's where I started, that little section right there, and I'm not touching this because it's still hot. But the last section that I did was like the middles of everything, and those came out pretty good.
I don't claim to be a MIG welder. If you guys have been around the channel, you know that I like to TIG weld a lot of things because it's a whole lot cleaner. I can make it look a lot better than if I'm MIG welding, but you know, as you go through it, you kind of get some of the tricks to it and you learn all over again. So I'm not upset with how this turned out. I think it would have looked better if I did TIG it, but TIGging it would have been a whole lot more work, and I would have had to buy a whole lot of stuff to be able to TIG it well, just because like I don't have thick electrodes and things of that nature. So that's gonna wrap up tonight. I'll pick you guys back up tomorrow. I'm gonna clean this all up and go back home and go to bed, because it's like 11 o'clock now, and I started this when it was 8. So yeah, we'll talk again in the morning. So see you guys. Well, it's the next day. It's been a fun morning. As you can tell, I already have the welding jacket on. Basically, when I woke up, came out here, it still didn't fit. So I started checking some things, and I found out that the posts that are on the end of this
were crooked. They measured fine. They measured as basically 90 degrees. But when I put my square up to them, they weren't square. They both angled inward like this. So it would start fine, but then you'd get to the point where it would bind together and it just wouldn't work. So what I've been doing is I cut it back apart. So obviously I cut these two tubes off. This little bandsaw has been great for that, actually. I started with an angle grinder on this one with a cutoff wheel, and it just was not going well. So changed plans, used the bandsaw to get it done. I also cut the shaft collar off, just because that way, with that out of the way, this would lay flat and I could shove this through cleanly and get a cleaner cut on the side of it than what I would if I was trying to hold this all wonky and put metal underneath it to bump it up to the right height and all that crap. So unfortunately, in my cutoff wheel experience, I roasted my hoodie, and thankfully I noticed before it burnt through my t-shirt. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to go buy a new hoodie because I kind of need one. And that's the second hoodie that I've destroyed in like a month and a half now, so not fun. Now what we're gonna do is I gotta clean all this stuff back up, which probably isn't gonna happen today. Probably do it tomorrow. Clean it all up, get all the crap off of it, and then we are going to try all over again. So I think this time I'm going to tack it together here at home, and then make sure it all fits, and then go MIG weld it. I don't really know. Third time's the charm, I guess. I thought this was going to be easier than what it was, but I guess I should have taken my time burning this all together, because I'm probably warping the crap out of it, and that's why it won't fit after I'm done welding every time. But yeah, that's where we're at. I'm going to get started on cleaning this stuff up, and then hopefully pick you guys back up to weld it all together, and hopefully for the last time it all fits, but time will tell. All right, we are back to the shop today to try and get this together straight one last time. So I cut this all apart yesterday, cleaned all of the upper section with a mill. You can see the nice clean edges now. Had to take a decent bit of material off to get it back flat. This is the opposite side. Cut off all the welds. It was all a lot of fun. And then all I did for these was I just took a grinding disc to them on the angle grinder and tried to clean them up as much as possible, because if I actually took them back to being circles, I'd probably not have much of that wall left. So that's where we're at. It's been a fun time to get here. Now I want to burn this all together and hope that it ends up being straight. So I'm going to do something a little bit different than what the instructions say to do. I'm going to leave it fixtured up like this. If the angle finder was on, you'd see that it reads practically 0. So what I'm going to do is basically hold these up in the air and tack them, and then from there I'll make sure that they stay where they're supposed to be. Put, you know, probably 4 tacks on them total, just so it stays where it's supposed to be, and then we can take this back apart and fully weld it. But that's what we're going to try. Hopefully I don't end up having to cut this back apart again. I'm saying that third time is the charm, so let's get to it. Let's be done with this project and hopefully move on. So let's see. I tacked them together again and only put this segment in as proof to you guys that this was sliding freely when it was just tacked together, but
as you can see, it fits like a glove, and I can fully weld this baby one final time. So I didn't record all of my welding, partially because it wasn't super great. There were some areas that I guess there was probably oil or something. It was dirty. The welder was not happy at all. So didn't record all of it, but we now have the finished product. So just like before, now we're gonna go home, let it cool down, and we'll try it all again tomorrow and see if this finally works. Fingers crossed. It's looking better than what it was before, because before I couldn't even get this far. But fingers crossed, pick you guys back up tomorrow, and this thing better freaking work or I'm gonna throw it through a window. So we'll see. All right, so after we let it cool down, came back to it this morning, still had some binding issues. It wouldn't go all the way down like it was supposed to. So I did some finesse work with the die grinder. I'll show you guys in a second. But now she finally slides. And this is hard to do one-handed, but she slides up and down. And it would actually come off as well. So what I had to do, what you'll see in there, is I took these little 1/4-inch sanding drums, basically for a Dremel tool. I have them for my die grinder, and I had to open up this tube. So basically what had happened, I think I put so much heat into this that when I welded them, these tubes on the end, instead of being, you know, straight up and down, when the heat got to them, they went like this. And I think these tubes were a little egg-shaped to start out with. So when they cocked over like that, then it would bind halfway down. So like I had to take material off of the inside on this side, and then on the outside down here to get this to slide up and down nicely. But now she slides. It's wonderful. The only other problem that I have is now that I cut this apart and welded it a couple times, not all of the dies fit. You can see my wonderful MIG welds in the corners there. So I can't fit all of the dies that, or all the fingers I should say, that are supposed to fit in one shot. And I might go back and clean it up, but also in reality, the likelihood that I'm going to be bending something that's 19 inches wide is very slim. So at the end of the day, I really don't care. But what I've also come to realize is I should have just tigged this. It would have been cleaner. It would have gone together way smoother. And truly, at the end of the day, what I've come to realize too is like none of these welds are like super structural. They don't have to be penetrated all the way through it. And I mean, obviously they should be. You're welding something together. They should be that way. But if I TIG welded this and it was a little bit on the cold side, I would have gotten away with it. And I should have thought about that ahead of time, because that probably would have made this a lot easier. I'm a much better TIG welder than I am a MIG welder. And I think that's truly my problem, is I put way too much heat into this thing as I was welding it together, because tacked together, that thing fit great. The more weld I put onto it, the worse the fitment got. So I think I just overheated it, and at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. Live and learn. It's not the prettiest thing anymore, but it is what it is. But now that this works, we're going to put this together one last final time, and then go over to the shop press and bend some scrap aluminum that I have laying around, just to see how well this thing works. So let's do that, and that'll wrap up this video. With all the massaging done, we are ready for one final assembly of this unit. It really isn't a quick thing to build with all the fingers and bolts needed to hold them in, and I probably should have broke out the power tools, but as you know, if you've been watching my videos long enough, I use hand tools as much as I can. But with all the fingers installed, or at least as many fingers as I can fit now, and all the bolts tightened up, we are able to go stick it in the shop press and test it out. Now, this is just a chunk of well-used aluminum sheet that I had laying around, so really not testing the capacity limits of this by any means. Really just wanted to test that, you know, the unit was functional as it was built and make sure that it bent something pretty well. And really, I just didn't want to waste any of my good material doing this, so this chunk of aluminum is what you guys get. So it seems to work as described. The test piece, this was just 1/8 inch thick 6061 aluminum, which isn't actually good for bending, but it's scrap that I had laying around. This is these are actually my table numbers for my wedding. I cut them on a water jet and welded them myself. But regardless, it works as described. There's a few little issues, minor things. It works overall. It does what it was advertised to do, so I can't complain about that. It's initially designed, it's designed by Swag Offroad to work with a Harbor Freight 20-ton shop press. Now, I have a Ranger shop press, 20 tons, still 20 ton, but this is a Ranger shop press, so it's made by Benpack, essentially. And some of the dimensions obviously aren't the same. You can tell, for one thing, like, it's wider here, so this doesn't fit perfectly centered, which is fine because this has an adjustable ram location. It's on slides up there, so you can use it off center and things of that nature. The other thing too is these bars here, the upright supports, are thicker, so the centering tabs that they provide with this to try and center it front to back wouldn't even work with this if I did weld them on. You can see, like, it's beyond flush right now, so if I tried to weld those on, wouldn't do me any good. The only other thing is all of the heights for where the table can be set. The issue is that where this needs to be set for the ram to have enough length to actually press the material and bend it, I actually have to compress the springs to get this in. Like, I can't take this out right now. It's in there. So I have to fight with this to get that underneath and then pry it back out, which, again, it's not Swag Offroad's fault for that. That is me trying to use something that is not designed to work with this specific press for what I want it to do. So maybe in the future I'll modify it a bit, make it better for this specific use. But overall, it's a good product. What they put out and what they advertise is what it does. It accomplishes the task. I think in the future I'll probably upgrade to one of their flat top V-mount dies. Basically, they make a slab that sits on top of here, and then you can adjust how thick of a bend radius you get by just adjusting 2 plates. I'm probably going to end up buying that at some point, but that's down the road. That's another $200 to spend, so it's not something I'm going to do right now. But overall, I'm happy with this. I'm glad that it finally worked. It slides up and down properly. You could see it when I did the bend test. It all worked how it was supposed to. So overall, thumbs up for this one. And I can't wait to use it for some future projects. We're going to be making brackets. I have a plan. You can see I have this piece of PVC down here. Ooh, I gotta cut that. You guys aren't supposed to see what's in those boxes. I have a plan that uses this PVC to organize the shop a little bit more. So yeah, that'll be some of the next projects. Hopefully soon we are going to start working on this transmission. There it is. And you can see I got some other fun H&R boxes sitting back there since the last time that I brought you guys into the garage. But plan is we are going to start working on this thing finally. I made a whole bunch of tools to press the bearings in. So that is what we are going to work on next. We are going to get the diff into that transmission case properly and be one step closer to finally driving the Mark II. It has been sitting in the garage now for at least 4 years, torn apart. It's gonna drive this year. If you come to Vag Fair in York in August, it will be there. I'm speaking it into existence now. But with that, that is gonna wrap up this video. So thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and we'll see everybody next time.